It's 11:35, and on behalf of the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce, I would like to welcome you to this 2020 State of Higher Education. This is our first Zoom webinar in holding the State of Higher Education, and many of you have attended this in the past, which we normally have at Sweetwater Country Club, and where we get to shake hands and high-five one another. And unfortunately, we can't do it right now, but we still wanted to have this session because our panelists have a lot of information to share with everyone. My name is Jim Rice, and this year I have the honor to serve as the Education Division Chair for the only 5-star accredited chamber in Southeast Texas. And it's really a pretty big deal because it took us 2 years to get this. And once you earn it, you have to re-earn it every couple of years. And we've been managing to do that, work very hard at that. So we do that because we are serving as an advocate for excellence in Fort Bend County and beyond. And the chamber serves not only our business partners, but our community as well. So today, we look forward to hearing from the leaders of our local colleges and universities, which Fort Bend County is blessed to have 4 premier institutions of higher education right in our own backyard, as they discuss the future of education in our rapidly changing times. I know we can all agree on that. But before we hear from them, I'm going to introduce our sponsors, because obviously we cannot hold these webinars unless we have sponsors. So we have with us on the webinar today, AGCM, Marty Schmidt, thank you for your sponsorship. Fluor Corporation, Rick Conley. I want to give a shout out to Rick because he was my former Scoutmaster. Actually, not mine. I'm older than he is. He was my son's Scoutmaster. HCC, Goldman Sachs, 10,000 Small Businesses, Liz Laura Carreño. From Houston Community College, Dr. Kurt Ewan. HR and Alignment, LLC, my good friend Mike Dobert. Kirksey Architecture, all the folks over there, I've known them forever. Melina Walker, Almager Architects Incorporated. Noe, thank you for your sponsorship. Rabba Kistner Consultants Incorporated. Gary Hodges, thank you. Rice and Garner Consultants, I want to thank everybody over there. Texas State Technical College, Randall Wooten. University of Houston, Dr. J. Neal, and from Wharton County Junior College, President Betty McCrohan. Thank all of you very much. We really do appreciate your generous support and continued support of these, of our sessions and now our Zoom webinar. So now let me introduce our presenters. We have, first of all, Dr. Madeline Burrillo, who is president of Houston Community College Southwest. Dr. Burrillo, if you would wave to everyone. Everyone knows who you are, but we'll just do it out of formality. Miss Betty McCrohan, president of Wharton County Junior College. Hi, Betty. Dr. J. Neal, associate vice president and chief operating officer for both the University of Houston at Sugar Land and the University of Houston at Katy. You're a busy guy, Jay. And Mr. Randall Wooten, provost for Texas State Technical College here in Fort Bend. We're happy to have you with us today. We thank you for joining us. We're going to have a panel discussion, but before we do, we're going to ask each of our presenters to deliver a short presentation on their campuses and their facilities before we go into that panel discussion. And so, Betty, if I could ask you to start. And Betty is president of Wharton County Junior College, and I'll give you the floor, Betty.
Thank you very much, Jim. We appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the chamber putting this on. Even in the situation that we're in, this method of communication, I think, will be very helpful to everyone involved. We're in Fort Bend County, as most of you know. We are located on the University of Houston campus in Sugar Land. Plus, we have a full campus in Richmond and a home campus here in Wharton that is a very traditional campus with dorms, athletics, and then one in Bay City that primarily deals with the industries in Bay City. We have been challenged No doubt about that. Every institution that you will hear from today. Following spring break, which didn't turn out to be much of a spring break, we came back and then were notified that we needed to stay at home, that we needed to provide the educational opportunities at home. And our faculty then went immediately to an online situation, which for a lot of our faculty was a new challenge. They had not done that. They were prepared to do it, but had not been in that world before, actually delivering classes in that means. So they went immediately to that, and we provided the remainder of the spring semester and are now providing the summer in primarily an online system. Now, the exception to that are the technical programs, and that was a real challenge because we have a lot of health profession programs. Not only could our students not get in to their classroom for a while, they couldn't get into clinicals. So all of that is still, we're working through that so that we can make sure that we graduate those students this summer. So that's how we're moving forward. The fall is a little bit different for us. It's the same for all of my colleagues. It's a challenge in that we're going to try to deliver education by three means. One would be strictly online. So if a student would prefer to be in an on class, they will have that opportunity. If they want to be in what is a mixed or a hybrid or class where they would take one face-to-face class, maybe once a week, there are other opportunities, and then they would take the remainder of that as online. Or we do have face-to-face that we plan on offering and are scheduled right now. And then we have the technical programs that we're gearing up and have been offering all along. So that is the plan, and that is how we're moving forward. We're in phase 2 of our opening plan, and we are having all of our staff and administrators will be back on the campuses starting July the 7th at this point in time. And as we have all said previous to this meeting, we have to be flexible and nimble because hearing, just as we discussed earlier, things are changing as we move forward because of the virus and the impact it's having on instruction. But we have been here since the onset of the virus. I think I have lived here actually for that period of time, and will be here remaining offering classes to all of our constituents and delivering those services, particularly in the employment and workforce area that is so critical right now to the state of Texas. So that's just a bit of an overview. I don't want to take any more time. I'll be glad to entertain questions as the panel proceeds.
Thank you, Betty. Dr. Neal, we'll move to you next.
Good morning, everyone. Jim, again, thank you for this opportunity to address our community, and thank you for the Chamber for your continued support. This time last year, we were talking about opening up a new building for the College of Technology on the campus, which opened in September. And never in a million years did any of us think that we'd be having the conversations we're having today. Madeline and Betty and Randy and I talk at least every 2 weeks, if not every week. And I think we're all in the same boat in a lot of these things as we're navigating how we move forward. Very similar working with Betty. Our spring break was the week before Wharton County's. And it was kind of the beginning of that week started out, well, maybe we're going to have to kind of slow things down. And then by the end of the week, we already had the mandate to work from home. And even, I was going through my notes preparing for today, just kind of looking at the conversations of notifications of when we knew about the virus, when the numbers started getting traced. And then, the mandate to go online, we didn't think it was going to be for the whole summer or for the whole spring semester. It was, let's get started online and kind of go through there. And then it transitioned to the rest of the semester. And then it went for the rest of the summer. We're facing a lot of the same challenges. A lot of the classes will transition easily, traditional lecture transitions well to an online platform. But some of the labs, some of the clinicals, these are real challenges that we've got to navigate. And being creative and working with our stakeholders and our partners on how we can get student access to this type of learning. So, we're moving, we're growing. The key themes, I'm laughing, but you're going to hear the word flexible. You're going to hear the word nimble. You're going to hear the word pivot a lot today. So that's kind of how we're navigating it. But again, thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Jay, and thanks for being here. Dr. Burrillo, we'll go to you next.
Good morning, and thank you, Jim, and to the Chamber. And it's a pleasure to be here with my colleagues, with Betty and Jay and Randy and all of you. This is one event that I look forward to join my colleagues in talking to the community about the great things that are always happening in Fort Bend County. And this year is a little bit different, as my colleagues have expressed. We are faced with something that we were not expecting to be addressing at this time. You know, HCC serves over 100,000 students a year with 7 different locations, 2 of which are located in the Fort Bend County area, specifically our Stafford campus that has the 2nd largest enrollment for our district, along with our Missouri City campus. So the transitions of that we faced towards the end of February and moving into spring break were challenging, to say the least. However, having been in Houston, the greater Houston area for over 30 years, if there's something I value of the entire region, is that we always seem to be able to come together and have a can-do attitude. There's some silver lining that has happening in all of these changes, and particularly in higher education, we're being challenged to change, to innovate. I told one of my colleagues, one of the things that I appreciate the most, you know, you got to stay positive, is that some things that we had been discussing for years, or at least, you know, even in January, we had some conversations about being able to put a computer and a laptop in the hands of all of our students. And something like that we thought it was impossible suddenly became possible within a 3-week period. So there are some silver lining. I think we sometimes, it's very easy when we look at the news to focus on all the negatives. But I am proud of the region as a whole, and I'm proud of Fort Bend County, of all the initiatives that we have developed together jointly. The ISDs, the higher education institutions, the chamber, and the government entities, how we've come together to respond to the needs outside of higher education of our first responders and our healthcare providers. We have had some initiatives, and I'll talk about that later. Jay has been part of that, and you have too. But it's been challenging, a lot of transitions, but every time there's a storm, after that, things will emerge. And I'm looking forward to what the next models of higher education will emerge out of this transition.
Thank you, Dr. Burrillo. And a brief reminder to all of our attendees, we do have a chat room, and feel free to go to the chat room and begin to queue up your questions, which we will take at the end of the presentation. And next, we're going to hear from Mr. Randy Wooten. Mr. Wooten.
Well, good morning, everybody. I didn't know for sure if I was going to make this. I had my total knee replacement a couple of days ago. And if I sound a little bit goofy, you'll know why, with all the stuff they pump in you to make sure that it doesn't hurt too much. So having said that is my excuse. That's about all I can say on that side. I would say ditto to a lot of the things that Betty said, and Madeline and Jay. There's not a wide variety of ways to approach this, and we all, I think, approached it the best way we could. And it's pretty similar as far as what happened. We were told, just like y'all were, to send everybody home in March, and we did. But then we immediately started planning with how do we get the spring group graduated, because they only needed about another 8 weeks to finish. So we made them group number A1 and put our faculty to work creating the rest of the not lab stuff, but the classroom stuff that they could put online. And so for about 5 or 6 weeks, they put them online. They got that semester done, and we brought our students back on May the 4th, which is kind of unusual. And the reason we were able to do that is we're a state agency, and our chancellor and the governor had had some conversations, and it appears that they wanted anybody that was in the state agency pot to be able to not close as long as we met all the PPE requirements. And so that's a challenge to itself. So May the 4th, we brought our A1s, which is our finishers for spring, back. So for the next 4 weeks, we got them ready and graduated them. And then at that point, summer took off. So on June the 1st, we started with 1 weekend in between, we started our June summer section. But instead of being 15 weeks, it was going to be 12 weeks. So we did some more compression there so that we could get to our scheduled fall start on August the 31st into what we would consider, and I put this with a question mark, normal, because I don't think any of us will ever be normal again after we go through this stuff. The thing that made our compressed schedule doable is that we had already started planning for PBE, performance-based education, a couple of years ago, and had planned to roll it out next year. So we weren't really experts on performance-based education, but we all knew a little bit about it. And so we jumped in the deep end of the pool right away and started getting those done. So what we did, as far as we put kind of a summary, we put all of our lectures on the website, and that was a new deal for many of our lecturers, our faculty. They'd never done that before. And we gave them pretty much of a free hand in what does this look like. And I think the secret to why it looked as good as it does is the faculty. I know all of us are proud of our faculty, but I did ask these faculty to do things which was outside their comfort zone, and they did it. It wasn't perfect the first time, but it worked for us. And so that's the way we approached this particular section. Now, as I mentioned, and we also had a graduation in there for our spring folks. The first, I think there was about 60 of them that needed to finish up. And so we had a parade on campus with their honking their horns and in their vehicles so that we can wear our masks like everybody else does. Now they'll come back for the next real graduation we have probably in the fall graduation right before Christmas. So that's a little bit probably disjointed, but I don't think it's any different than what most of you had done in order to get the students out there. Any questions for me?
Well, thank you, Randy, for those comments. And I think hearing from everyone, we've got a diversity of experiences since many were learning online and you were able to reopen. I know that I've been on Zoom meetings from dusk to dawn, and I just would like to ask our panelists here, how have you been communicating with your staff and instructors during this period you did have to shelter in place? Betty, would you like to comment on that?
I'd be happy to. We've been using something like Zoom internally. It's collaborate, which means that we have done our educational process. So we've been using that and then going to Zoom. What I have noticed is that I have a meeting about every 2 minutes. The minute I get off of one, I have another one. So communication has really expanded and we have accelerated in a lot of ways. And it's been very beneficial, though, that, as Madeline said, we're learning some really positive things from this. It's not all negative. We can communicate using these different devices. As you know, we've got some distance between some of our campuses, so it's very helpful. But I think it's helpful if you can look at the person too. That was an advantage that we found over just using the telephone. So we've expanded that communication, expanded it with students as well, doing a lot of different means to communicate with students. Still have our staff that are actually doing phone calls to students, emails to students. So it has just accelerated those other means of communication.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else care to comment on that?
Sure. we have, prior to the closing, we had already implemented Microsoft Teams, and we had created channels for different departments, anticipating at the end of February, we kind of anticipated something like this could happen. We didn't know when, but we knew we needed to create some kinds of communication. So we created subgroups and using Teams. So we become Teams experts. Like Betty said, I think I have a Teams meeting every other 10 minutes. The complexity of that is that we have Teams meetings and outside groups using Zoom and other virtual tools like WebEx, and they continue to emerge, right? So a lot of increased communication, not necessarily just about the work, but are finding that the lack of the social interaction on a one-to-one becomes one of the new leadership and management skills we're all going to have to adapt to, because the technology existed before. We just didn't, we were hesitant on adopting them, right? We still wanted to get in our cars and go to another site, and we are missing the human connection. So how to create human connection virtually is becoming more and more critical, because we're going to be in this for a while. But a lot of this type of meetings and having some other types of trying to create a social interaction with utilizing the technology tools has become essential for us.
Yeah. In previous days, we would have meetings scheduled, and we'd get in our car and drive to those meetings. And then when you left, you had a kind of a mental break before you got back to the office or to the next meeting. But now, as both of you have said, Betty and Madeline, they can be back to back to back. And I found at the end of the day, I could be mentally exhausted from all that.
Yeah.
Jay, have you experienced that same thing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we learned very quickly is a lot of the meetings that are scheduled have to be intentional. When you were in the office or in your suite, you would bump into coworkers like, hey, while I have you, do you have 2 minutes? Let me ask you real quick.
Yeah.
And just pop in one questions and keep moving on your task. And that has to be scheduled now. And a lot of that was the social interaction also, because you may throw in, how your kids, just visit with your coworkers. So even within our office, we used to have managers meetings every Monday morning. We've gone to a Zoom platform where we're having to meet twice a week now. And I think part of that is because from an operations and the facilities perspective, things are changing very quickly. So again, this nimble, what are the updates? And sometimes the meetings aren't very long, but it's just a chance for us all to see each other and make sure we're all on the same page. Because again, if the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, we make a lot of mistakes that way. So I think that's helped our communication piece. But, at one point, I probably need to do it. We haven't done it in a while, but, we're now about 100 days into this quarantine, and it's transitioned over time. When it first started, our the staff really missed each other. So it's okay, let's do a virtual happy hour at 5:01 on Friday. And it was for everybody, and it was great. And we started, I think we did it too often. We were doing it like every week, and then we went to every 2 weeks. We need to bring that back. It's just, again, that social interaction. I see you, you see me, your family's doing okay. I'm laughing because, a lot of y'all know I have 4 children, and now we have 3 dogs. So my office mates, my current office mates, aren't very aware of their surroundings sometimes during meetings. So I actually came in the office today so you wouldn't hear my coworkers in the office. And that's been a big adjustment also, how we do work, when we do work. Jim, to your point, even driving into work, that gave you a little bit of time to mentally prepare for what you had to do in that day. And now you wake up, you make a pot of coffee, and boom, you're at work, and it starts early and then it goes late. I think with our team also, I think it was a strong desire to demonstrate that we're being active and accessible to each other. And we were terrified to miss a call, or, in case someone texts me or emails me, I have to be available all the time. And we never did that before. You know, the reality was if somebody called and you were on another call or weren't available, they left a message, and that's okay. You know, you get back to them. So I think we've had to adapt in that sense also of, that goes to your point of the mental exhaustion. You know, it's just being present, just moving things so quickly. We need a little downtime. I mean, I had this conversation with my team this week. I think they're starting to see some burnout, and they have vacation time scheduled. You know, they've earned it. Take it. The sad thing is there's nowhere to go right now. You know, I know they wish they could escape their families. I mean, I'm in the office right now. You know, but you know, the thing is to set things down for a little bit. I think is important also. Yes, it's moving quickly, and we need to be nimble. But we've got to take care of ourselves also. And I think that's where we're at now as we enter into July. You know, a lot of times for us, once the spring semester is over, you know, you get through finals and then you get gearing up a little bit for summer school, but that's a big time for planning, redirecting for the fall. And we haven't had that. So we need to be good to each other.
Yeah. Randy, I want to reach out to you because you made a comment earlier about having your instructors record their lectures. And so what I have learned along the way is the concept of synchronous learning, which means you're in the classroom with your fellow students listening to the professor or teacher, and then asynchronous learning when you might be, you know, an on-demand course, if you will. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to record the lectures and what was the thought process behind that?
Sure. The thought process at that moment in time was, how do we get these rising seniors or rising graduates out and finished? Because many of them had jobs or job offers, and they were just waiting to go out and do that. And so that forced us into, given what we have to, hybrid was a hybrid piece, but on film or video over the internet, and then bring them in. One of the things I learned, Jim, is, and the other folks may be able to elaborate on that too. What I found is that most of my folks don't like that. What we did end up doing is, yeah, here's your video and here's your stuff, and you can watch it 10 times if you want to. But when they came in, the instructors needed to spend about 15 minutes of lab time making sure that they were all on the same starting block. Some people can take and do nothing but reading or nothing but watching the screen, and some people can't because of a variety of reasons. One of them is interaction, and sometimes our students didn't have a computer, and we found that out earlier on, or even an internet. So we ended up buying hotspots and a lot of other things to get our students where they could finish. But I don't think it's anything you can really plan for, Jim, except it's going to be chaos, and it's going to look a little different than everybody else. And one of the things I did when I was doing a little research after about 3 or 4 weeks, about a month ago, is on stress, and everybody's touched that topic. To go into work has a certain stress level, and I'm not sure what how this goes. But when you do that, when you switch over to at home, it doubles for all the reasons that a lot of us have talked about right now. Is we don't have the interaction, and it takes so long to make sure everybody is clued in on whatever discussion that's going on, because you may have a piece of the puzzle but we don't, and not everybody's automatically available at the drop of a hat. So I know my stress level has gone up quite a bit, and my guess is that your faculty and the admin folks have also.
Absolutely. And, you know, even here at my office, we've had folks working from home, and we've had Zoom meetings, and there's been a lot of talk about, well, maybe we don't need to build as many office buildings anymore because people can work from home. But then I've often thought, if everyone's working from home, like for my office, how do they feel like they're still part of an organization? How do we connect? To your point, Jay, how do we still feel like we belong to an organization? Because people are social creatures, and we want to be around people, most of them. So I'm sure that you have been, all of your institutions have had some online classes in the past, but now that this has forced us all, as has been pointed out, we've been probably toying with the ideas of doing more online instruction, but now we've been really forced into it. Do you have plans to increase the number of online classes, or would it be a hybrid of something so that students are doing online but spending some time in the school so they feel connected with their colleagues, with their fellow students, as well as their professors? Or what have you thought about that? Eddie, why don't we go back to you?
Well, that's what our plans are for the fall, is that we have a variety of different opportunities for students. Hopefully we can continue with that, where some students will be able to come in face to face. Some of our programs would be very, very difficult to offer without that opportunity to be on the campus. So we have that variety. It will start off slow because we're uncertain right now as to how we will deal with face-to-face. We know we have plenty of protocols in place. Jay and I work closely because we're in the same facility in regard to that. But as we all stated earlier, do we think that everyone's going to follow those protocols? What kind of issues will we have? You know, we deal with a lot of students that, for want of a better word, and I know people don't like the word remedial, but those are students, and when I say remedial, I consider myself remedial in math at times, so that need that connection. So those are even more difficult for us to deal with, but we're going to offer all of those different opportunities. There are students that are frightened to come back to campus. There are parents that are frightened for them. So we're offering more online, to answer your question there, but face-to-face, and then an opportunity for a student to come to campus for maybe one day a week and then do the remainder of their work online. So it is what is planned, Jim. But plans, as we've all said, you know, may change. I'm just thinking that I just got through with a group, working with a group of my team on that plan that starts the 7th of July, and I'm already thinking that's going to have to be amended in some way. So, you know, we just have to be prepared to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Betty. How about you, Madeline? Do you?
We, similarly to Wharton, we created different pathways. We created what we call Next Learning, which provides options to our students. We have the traditional online anytime, online on a schedule, and we learned that from during spring. A lot of our students do like still that personal connection with the faculty member and being able to connect with the faculty on a synchronous basis, or what we call online on a schedule. It provides that level of community for them. And then our labs courses or skills classes for many of our workforce programs, as Betty mentioned, we're going to have to offer more of those because we're going to limit how many people will be in that room, in that lab, maximizing not more than 9 students in a lab. So for the fall semester on Next Learning, the lab courses will be face-to-face, but it will be smaller classes and more sections. Every single skills and lab course does have an online component. We learned that we need to be able to pivot quickly because of the circumstances. And then what we call Flex Campus, which is where students have the choice to attend a class on schedule at the campus. And some students will be able to streamline that class at that time and rotate. Maybe this week they don't want to come to class and they rather come on Thursday. And so there is a vehicle by which they will rotate when they can be on campus, and this is to maximize the number of students in a class. Again, our principle on Next Learning was to provide safe options for our students, being able to provide social distance and meeting the CDC guidelines of a maximum number of people convening at a time. So we do have a video that we created for our students to explain the 4 options, and I believe the Chamber has posted that on the website. If any of the people who are watching us today wants to see that, I encourage them to go and see that video on what options we're offering for the fall semester. And yes, we do have more classes online. One thing that we have already engaged in, there is a lot of technology that already existed around us, like this. I mean, we've had these tools for a while. The rate of adaptation to the technology tools around us has accelerated. And we're looking at virtual reality and augmented reality in our workforce programs. So currently, right now, we are engaged in developing curriculum that utilizes that technology for our workforce and skills programs, because we got to think of doing things differently and outside of the traditional way. And I think this is one of the things that this crisis has helped us be able to figure out. How do we use the technology to do what we do, but do it a little bit different? And so the tools are out there, and we're working on public safety, automotive, manufacturing, and IT courses to start with. That takes time, but we're already engaged in healthcare. We're already engaged in doing that, and we see that that's going to be one way in which we will transform out of this crisis, to be able to provide skills labs in a different format. Not that we will replace completely the lab component, but how do we augment the experience of our student utilizing 21st century technology tools? And so we're headed a lot into that. I'm excited about that. But again, our principles on our Next Learning for fall and our guiding principle is that we will, any decisions, safety of our students, of our faculty and our staff, will take priority over any decisions that we make.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay and Randy, I know you have offerings at your institutions that you can't do online. For example, I know, Jay, you have a highly regarded nursing college, and Randy, you've got things there at TSTC that students have to lay their hands on. So how are you dealing? I know, Randy, you're already opened, but Jay, how are you dealing with those things?
Right now, Dean Tart and I are in constant communication also with the College of Nursing. And, right now, as of 12/13 on June 26th, because it may change by the time we get done here, the plan is to really kind of front load our semester with the students, the nursing students in particular, getting their simulation labs taken care of, in hopes that by later in the fall, they would be able to go into their clinicals. That's a lot of what ifs, but, looking at, similar to what Madeline mentioned, we're having to offer more sections of more labs to spread the students out. Back to our previous conversation, the meetings about meetings to get ready to have meetings mode. Some of the teams or task force that we put together very quickly were a new normal task force, a return to work task force, and an academic delivery task force, and reaching out to faculty, staff, and students to kind of get a pulse of what they were feeling. So again, similar to Betty and Madeline, we are going to what we're calling a high flex model. So in theory, students can come face to face, but there are limitations on how many students we can have in the classroom. You know, we still have to maintain 6-foot radius of social distancing. So we've had to do inventories of all of our classrooms to see how many students we can get. And I believe it or not, the smaller classrooms are better in our favor because you can move the desk around. In our larger classrooms, where you have permanently, you know, the theater style classrooms, if you've all been in the Brazos Hall, our largest classroom traditionally seats 150 students. If you're doing social distancing in there properly, you can only get maybe 30 students in that classroom. So we lose a lot of the space that's available. Thankfully, though, we've got wonderful technology here in the building already, and we're adding some for synchronous learning. So we've had the capability, like Madeline mentioned, we just need to utilize it more. Need to utilize it more to where we can have faculty at main campus or at home lecture to students in Sugar Land or Katy or Maine or the students at home. We can also record those lectures so then we can have asynchronous learning. So again, similarly, high flex, synchronous lecture in real time, and then the traditional asynchronous classes will be in effect. The other plan that the university is planning for us in the fall, this would be across the board, would be we'd like to have all the face-to-face learning completed by the week of Thanksgiving. So when the students go home for Thanksgiving, they will not be coming back to campus. They will finish up any course. And usually there's like a week left, maybe 10 days left of lecture after Thanksgiving. They'll finish that up and all their finals will be online. So I think even in navigating through that, how we deliver final exams will be different. You know, if technology is there to use cameras, so sometimes we need to see to ensure that students aren't Googling answers, or as a faculty member, you make it an open note, open book exam, but those tend to be tougher, and students have to know the material. Or project-based learning, so there's using Zoom or Teams technology to deliver presentations to groups. So how we navigate that's going to be completely different. So we're learning as we're going.
Lot of things to consider. How about you, Randy? I know a lot of your instruction is very hands-on intensive, and I guess it sounds like you haven't missed a beat, but are you able to social distance at the same time?
That's yeah. Short answer is yes on most of our programs. You know, the only program we have that we can put all of it online is our cyber program. All the rest of them, there's no way we can get away with calling somebody final or a technician on a diesel engine unless he or she has actually worked on the diesel engine. All this wonderful technology is wonderful, but it doesn't get you across the goal line on many courses, many programs, because you've got to actually do it. An example is HVAC. Part of their learning is to wrap vents and ducts. Well, that's a two-man job. I don't care how you cut it. And it just takes 4 hands to make one of them do right, and that needs 2 people. But one of the things, Jay, we did right away, and it's still ongoing, is we took every single classroom activity and saw and evaluated it as far as how dangerous is it on the PPE scale to have people in close proximity, and is it okay to have them there one time for 10 minutes? I know it's not okay to have them there 10 times for an hour, because that's what all the data shows us the longer you're around someplace. And so we've really had to scurry and say, we accept the risk on this particular lesson at this particular time. And so what we'll do to mitigate that is put up barriers and maximum time of closeness would be 10 minutes and those types of things. And we've leaned on the CDC a lot for some of those types of answers. And so that's the way we're getting through that. But we have a term, pencil whip, the fact that you're a proficient in that if you've never done it. One of the things we're doing is saying, instead of 6 repetitions of climbing a pole, how about 3? Does that get them to the proficiency level they need? So some of the things are just from history. We've always done it that way. Well, Now is not the time to bring out, we've always done it that way, tablet, because you're going to have to look at better ways and numbers. And that's where I think we were lucky to already start in the mindset of PBE. We think that that's going to be a game changer in about a year as we start rolling that out. We were supposed to start rolling 2 programs out this fall, HVAC and line worker, but that's been put on hold for right now. But it could turn out that is, in fact, something we want to start. And somebody mentioned a minute ago, as far as sections in the labs, that's the way we view PBE would be working once we get fully implemented, is you almost call, like calling a restaurant or a movie and say, I want 3 hours on Thursday and in this program. And to not bid on them, but to call ahead and reserve so that we can get all of our students covered and not have many blank spots. Because many times in some of our programs, I've got 100 people wanting in there in a 30-person lab, and other times I don't. And we can all know usually when that is. If they don't, it's usually on a Friday afternoon. So we're still kind of trying to come up with the what ifs. Jim, the other thing that gets on us, we've got 10 locations across the state, and so it's hard to have one size fits all. And so that's the other thing we're going through. We had if you look at the hierarchy of department chairs, and I'm about to walk off in a place, Jay, that I know is dangerous. You can't share this with anybody. Department chairs were supposed to be running what this looked like. But when it actually rolled out, what it was heavily instructor-centric. And so the power, if you'll let me call it that for a moment, in the academia world shifted somewhat from department chairs down to lecturers in their classroom on making it work. And as time has gone along, we're hearing less and less from the department chairs and more from our instructors. And we've called we've called the instructors business units, just like you had a Subway sandwich shop, and you're going to be more engaged in how many students you put through and what do the grades look like. And so they are becoming more and more embroiled in what does the classroom look like, even though we all teach the same lesson. Sometimes the approach to that lesson is a little bit different, especially when we have to have the PPE. We got too many acronyms, PBE, PPE, and I'm sure there's several more that we could all think of. There was one more thing, but I forgot it for now. If you'll excuse me, I'll wrap up with it in a little bit.
Well, thank you, Randy. Yes, Madeline.
I think I want to also emphasize that for all of us, this has been a huge undertaking to transition overnight institutions that have been set in certain traditions of how we deliver instruction, but also how we deliver services. So it hasn't just been the transition of instruction overnight, which could have, was only done and able to perform that change through the hard work of our faculty and our chairs and our deans. It's really been, as Randy mentioned, driven with the support and the help of the faculty, but also the services to our students. So we transition things from admissions to testing, to career services, to advising. All of the services of the institution have also had to transition to a delivery mode of having to deliver those services to people on a virtual environment. So it's a huge undertaking, and I just don't want to, I want to make sure we don't lose the sight of how much human effort this has taken by every single member of our institutions, faculty and staff. And I am very proud of what we've done as an institution at ACC, but listening to my colleagues, I'm very proud of the entire Fort Bend area and the institutions of higher learning to see how we've transitioned to be able to continue to provide educational opportunities to our communities.
Well, thank you for that. And I've got just a few more questions. I know we're kind of drawing to the end of our session, but here's a question. All of you have had to deal with COVID-19. And my question is, what additional expenses have you expended to make your facilities safe? What has the impact on your revenue been this past year? Maybe it really didn't because it kind of happened in midterm. But, and then what are your expectations moving into the fall on revenue, and what's been the impact on student enrollment? So there's a lot of questions in that big enchilada, but I'll just take a stab at one end of it and we'll work towards the middle.
Well, you want me to respond since
Yes,
I've had the first spot, going in. We don't yet know the total impact on revenue. For this current year we're in, we're holding very well. Our enrollment continued, so we didn't have a decline. We were fortunate in community colleges not to be reduced by 5%, where our colleagues in higher education, the remainder of higher education, were. And the more fortunate thing I think that I've never seen before in all of my 40-something years is that the state of Texas actually recognized that we were essential to the workforce and to the recovery of the state of Texas. So I'm prouder of that probably than anything else that could have happened to us as a state. And being on a number of state committees, my Zoom meetings have just grown exponentially. But we've had to buy PPEs, as all of my colleagues have. We've had to gear up in IT, in our distance education areas. We've also had to do additional training for our faculty and staff. And as Madeline pointed out, which was very appropriate, it's not just the faculty that have been doing all this online. It's every area within the college has had to go to an online service venue, which we had been planning for a very long time, but it just had not happened the way we would have liked to see it. And that was costly in some cases. We had to pay a lot of staff that were considered essential to come in to maintain the facilities, to clean the facilities. So all of that, my colleagues have experienced as well. Going into the future, there are a number of things for community colleges that are out there. Number one are the taxes, and you in public education understand that. While that dollar amount, effective tax rate, will keep us afloat, it's what people are going to be able to pay in their taxes. How many will default? We're hearing more and more people that have no income. What's going to happen in that particular area is a real concern for those of us that have that kind of support, any of the community colleges and all of public education. So that's an unknown. It's an unknown if the state will be able to continue, if after the comptroller's statement that's to come, if they will have to see at the very end of next year that they might have to reduce our funding again. How many students will actually continue in education? So you're key to enrollment in public education. We are in community colleges. So we have to plan and look at our reserves. And I think next year is going to be the greatest challenge to all of us. It's not this year, it's next year. And how can we afford to continue social distancing in face-to-face classes, no matter how we reinforce those with a hybrid approach that actually makes that class size larger? I just don't know, particularly in the technical areas. Now, I will mention one other thing, and then I'll get off and allow my colleagues time. The CARES Act did help us in some regards, because it helped us buy some of those things that we could not have purchased. As a mid-sized college, we're limited in our revenue stream. So that's kind of how I see the future. I know I didn't address every one of those questions that you had because I forgot them all. I'm getting like Randy. There's too many things going on. But the technical education is the critical component for the state of Texas. That is not to downplay the transfer program. It is something that we all should support, but we've got to have people going back to work. And how we get there is the big question.
Absolutely.
So I'll end with that.
Okay. Randy, would you like to comment on that? Do you see student enrollment remaining steady at this point?
Sure. If anybody has a crystal ball that looks at that, I want to borrow it for about 20 minutes, because we're looking right now, because the state starts asking us for budget information fairly early, before springtime, which is our fall, which is normally our biggest bubble. And right now we just don't know. We're trying everything we can to contact students to see what are your intentions. And right now, it doesn't look like we're going to have as many, but all of us know that many times students don't register for the fall or even care about the fall until they get close to it. It's on their windshield. So right now we're just guessing. One of the things that we are doing is to one-on-one have the instructors in the classroom talk to the students and try to get an idea. They're probably closest to telling us, TSDC, the truth is the classroom in the building. I'm sorry, folks. I had one more thing, but I told you I was on some of that joy juice still from my operation, and it made me a little fuzzy. I apologize. I'll jump back in a minute. I can only remember one thing at a time right now, Jim.
That's okay. We might need to borrow the prescription by the end of the day.
I've got some really good stuff. It's not good for this, and I sure can't drive. I can guarantee you that. I could barely get around with this walker.
Well, thank you for those comments, Randy. And Jay, we'll ask you the same question. What's student enrollment look like? And
so kind of to the budget question, back to Betty's piece of it, very early on, the university kind of did a freeze on any expenses in hiring. So we're incurring some of these costs. We did get some help from the CARES Act. So we're having to buy a lot of PPE, trying to create a cleaning culture when the students come back. We don't really have the bandwidth for custodial services to go in between every single class and clean up. So do we have the supplies so students get in the habit of you come into class and you wipe down your area? So we've encouraged some calls like that. One of the things I think young people, and a lot of people right now, not just young people, but there's so little that we feel we have control over. So I can control my academic future. I can continue to enroll in classes. So actually our enrollment for the summer was up. One of the things that we did though was for students that were taking over 6 hours in the summer, we waived the permanent fees. So students were able to enroll in classes for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars less than they normally would. So that was a great incentive and our numbers did go up. Right now for the fall, I track these numbers every day. We're a little bit behind, but to Randy's point, for a lot of students, they don't really start enrolling until late July, early August. And then we're continuing, we have all virtual freshman orientation. So every day we have students going through the orientation process virtually, and our incoming freshmen can't enroll for classes unless they attend one of the orientations. One of the things that we're actually seeing in our office now is an uptick in phone calls from families saying, not really comfortable with my child going back to XYZ or out of state. How do we transfer over? So I'm anticipating that as universities are making some hard decisions, we may see an uptick in enrollment for our local students that want to stay here. And we're happy to be in that position and support our community. In terms of, again, with the crystal ball, we're just going to have to wait and see. I'm a little concerned if we've got to pivot to an all online platform, what that will be like for students. Because a lot of things that the students really want across all of our campuses is this academic community, to have access to your professors and learn about research and get these hands-on experiences. And if that's taken away, I think students are really going to reconsider their options. I would be very adamant in encouraging young people to go ahead let's keep moving in this direction, because hopefully this isn't going to last forever. And that when you graduate, there will be wonderful jobs available for you when you do graduate. So I think we've got a kind of an obligation to encourage our young folks to stay the course right now, no matter what the platform is.
Madeline, do you have any comments on how this has affected your revenue stream and the ability of students to return in the fall?
Well, we have spent over $1 million in additional cleaning costs, cleaning companies for our specialized labs, sanitizers, PPE. We also spend over $8 million in additional laptops and headsets, internet service for faculty, staff to be able to work remotely, additional cybersecurity, software, toolkits, and we also lost revenue because we waived our online education fee for the summer classes. And even in the spring, obviously, a lot of those fees we waived to them because it wasn't their choice. So there's about $1.5 million on losses of revenue based on that online fees. And we ended up also giving more refunds to students. We had students that had to drop because of loss of jobs, because of illnesses and unusual circumstances. We did also receive money from the CARES Act, about $14.1 million that were designated for students. And we were able to disperse $14 million in student grants.
Wow.
Again, I mean, the effort of what this has affected the institution, it's really huge. And in terms of what we expect for the fall, you know, the cleaning costs are going to continue, are going to be part of our budget next year. So will the PPE, so will additional adjuncts for some of our lab courses because we have to have more sections. And then we're also hiring more instructional designers to be able to help us to adopt and to help the faculty, particularly in workforce programs, to adapt curriculum to be more engaging in an online environment. I mean, we transitioned quickly, but that didn't mean that you have a course that was necessarily had all the things that we could put in a curriculum to have a higher engagement level in an online environment. So in terms of our enrollment for summer, we actually are up like our colleagues, particularly on the credit side. Our continuing education, however, was affected because most of those continuing education courses that we offer are skills-based. So we saw a drop in continuing education because they didn't have access to the labs. For the fall semester, you know, historically, our enrollment in community colleges and in general in higher education tends to be counter-cyclical to the economic outlook. So when there's a high unemployment, there's usually people come back to school to upskill or to obtain new degrees. There's a different factor right now, right, with the COVID-19. And so people, we don't know what to expect when it comes to that. Our budget for next year is based on a flat enrollment, not based on growth, not based on a decline, because we're trying to balance the historical perspective. And I will say that for many of the people who are unemployed right now and are facing that, one of the things that we've done is to increase the number of fast track programs so that the focus on high demand, post COVID-19, high demand jobs. And we created a website called Jobs Now Houston, where it aligns the training opportunities with those high growth demand areas where we've been able to develop fast track classes for people to come in and train quickly to be able to get a job in this post COVID-19. So reinventing ourselves and making sure as community colleges do to be responsive to the need of industry. So those are some of the things that we anticipate for the fall semester. And then continuing our partnerships with the four-year institutions like U of H, where those that are coming for academic classes, that we have a seamless transition for them. And I will encourage people who are listening today to encourage their family members, their friends, and their colleagues that this is the time to go and get a degree and upskill. And we have 4 great institutions in the Fort Bend County area.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I want to key off something that Randy mentioned earlier, and that was that it's still June.
Yeah.
And for a lot of students, it's not quite on their radar screen yet to be dialed into returning to school in the fall. It's on their mind, but they haven't maybe made all their plans. So you shared a lot of great information, all of you have, with us here. 2 questions. One, how are you sharing this information with your current students and prospective students, and also parents? And when they have questions such as you're making these all these offerings available to your students, are you also making some of these offerings available to your staff? I know Jay has already responded to an online chat, but I want to share that with the group in case they didn't see it. Are you offering faculty and staff the same option to avoid physically going to the classroom? So let's start with, how are you sharing the information? How are you getting the word out about this to students? And especially if they're freshmen, their parents. Jay, you mentioned some parents are leery of sending their students out of state, but I know you have student housing, and so does Betty. So how do you deal with those issues and letting them know that they're going to be safe? I'll let you go first, Jay.
Okay. Well, a couple of things is I'd say, for communication, it's all the above, through our website, through social media, emails, just any way. And again, we're probably not covering everything, but just trying as much as keep things up to speed, up to date, as much as possible to answer questions. We've got multiple FAQs coming up. We have an actual COVID-19 website or link on our page. Just kind of gives the updates of where we're moving. With the main campus, though, the housing gets complicated really fast. And we've got multiple formats of housing. So, for some of us that are a little bit older that went to U of H, Moody Towers are our oldest dorms that have, 2 students to a room with, communal bathrooms. So looking at how often those bathrooms are cleaned, one of the options is to have students in the towers not have a roommate that semester. They may just have 1 student per room. In some of our more freshman housing, though, Cougar Village, yeah, I'm laughing. Dean Tart's getting me up. She's also commenting, yes, U of H does have a COVID-19 website. So she's helped prompt, Dean Tart's helping to prompt me. I appreciate you, Dean Tart. With some of the other dorms that have suites, maybe 4 students to a suite, we may only go to 2 students per suite. So again, we're still trying to have to navigate through that for the students that want to live on campus. And really, the information I've gotten is a lot of the housing they're trying to, if they can, reserve for our out-of-state, out-of-town, international students, make sure they have a place should they want to come on campus. But, and I know Betty's going to speak to this, is it gets really complicated very quickly when you start looking at athletics. And when you have athletics, you have to have housing. And when you have housing, you have to have food service. So I'm going to let Betty speak, because I know she and I've had long conversations about that. So.
Yeah, I can jump in and say that probably the thing that right now is keeping me awake at night and made a decision about yesterday is athletics. You have athletics, you have to have dorms. If you have to have dorms, you have to have food service. And you can't just say, I'm going to start that in spring. It doesn't work that way. So that has been a real conundrum. I think that's a really good word for that. But because that is an integral part of our culture and an integral part of this particular campus, we have decided to move forward with that. And I have a group working on protocols that will be in place. We do not have those dorms, unfortunately, that will allow us to go to one person per dorm, because we just don't have that many dorms. And so we're going to move in that direction and then see what transpires, how the virus is going to act and behave, and how our employees and our students will behave. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. That's just that everybody wants to be a part of the community. And when we opened the gate for people, they took advantage of that, as we all did. And keeping students in a dormitory or athletes socially distanced is going to be even more of a challenge. But it is an integral part of what we do. And so we plan at this point in time to put that in place. And a lot of parents are calling wanting to know if we will have dorms. I thought that was interesting. I thought we would have the opposite, really. But they are very excited about having their student go through the traditional college approach. And that's what University of Houston, I'm sure, is facing as well. That community where you get out and you get to invest your freshman year in those things. And that's all going to be different. Baseball games are going to be different. Football games are going to be different if they're there. So thank you, Jay, for bringing that one back up before lunch, before I had lunch anyway. So
Sorry.
that's all right. That's all right. I think this is a year to learn, as Madeline said. We have learned a lot. And if any group can mediate this and get through it, it's higher education. And so is public education. I don't want to be in public education right now, Jim. I think you guys have a tremendous challenge. And let me just say, before I think we're close to ending, I just want to publicly thank everyone that's working with us, but I want to thank my faculty and staff. They have just been phenomenal. And I don't get to do that often enough. And I know you guys appreciate them as well, but they just have, it's amazing to see the changes they've been able to make. So with that, I'll end.
Well, thank you, Betty. Madeline, did you have any comments or thoughts you would like to add?
Mike, I guess in general, I just want to say that, we are facing unique times. I like to echo what Betty just said, and I alluded to that earlier. The faculty and staff of our institutions have done the heavy work of transitioning, of this transition, and continue to do that every day. You mentioned earlier, your question earlier had to do about how we letting our students know about the different options and the different things that we're doing for fall. And, as Jay mentioned, we're using social media, we're using text messages, email. Our student services staff has also been doing a terrific job, and our financial aid team also continues to every day do a terrific job in processing applications that are coming in, and we anticipate an increase in financial aid applications because of the number of people who continue to file for unemployment. We also have a TV channel, HCC TV, and every day we have the Up to the Minute, and we do briefings. Our Facebook, Instagram, all of our Twitter, all of our social media are actively being utilized by our staff. So we're looking for, every single possible medium to tell our students, and then through the chambers and partnerships and our community-based organizations, talking about Jobs Now Houston, that I mentioned earlier and I posted, and utilizing your channels to be able to tell, how we're offering classes in the fall, and basically utilizing every single organic possible medium or through partnerships to get the message out. But again, our faculty and staff have done a fantastic job, and we could not do this without them and the support of their family. So
Absolutely. I know everyone has been working so hard, and in Fort Bend County, a county with about, I think we're up to about 880,000 residents, we're really fortunate to have 4 institutions of higher learning, and not just in 4 locations, but multiple locations throughout our community. And that serves our children, our students, their parents, and our families, and it helps grow our community and make our community a better place to live and work. So we appreciate having Wharton County Junior College, Houston Community College, University of Houston in Sugar Land and in Katy, and also Texas State Technical College, and the heavy lifting that you have done to continue to provide instruction to your students this past spring, as well as currently during the summer and planning moving ahead into the fall. And I agree with you, Madeline. This too shall pass. It's unfortunately not quick enough, but it will pass, and we'll be stronger and smarter and tougher next time to get through it. And the chamber is live streaming this on Facebook, and it will be recorded. So you have the opportunity to share this also, or put links on it on your website, so to help get the word out, because we can't share this information enough because it's changing so rapidly. It's almost like daily updates.
Jim, and I guess another comment I'd like to make before we close is the close partnership with our school districts. For our community colleges, we have a large number of dual credit programs with Fort Bend, with Stafford Municipal School District and Lamar. And the decisions, this actually brings how closely together we continue to work and have to work. Any decisions that are made at the ISD level will impact how we manage our dual credit for the fall, and that's still in progress. So I know Betty's nodding because we all are kind of waiting for that component.
Right.
But I think it continues to bring the educational group of Fort Bend County how well we all work together, and I appreciate that, particularly the support of the chamber and you and the entire Chamber of Commerce Fort Bend and all the other chambers in the Fort Bend County. Just want to thank all of them and my colleagues who are here today. They're great partners to work with.
Well, thank you very much. And so in closing, I just want to thank you and give a shout out to you, Betty, and Jay and Madeline and Randy, for your hard work with your institutions. I've known you for many years. I know how hard you work and how committed you are to serving the educational needs in our community. We really appreciate you taking time. Maybe you look forward to having one Zoom moment so you could share with us before you get back on the next call, but we do appreciate you taking time to be with us today, really do. We always look forward to having us in the summer. And next summer, I hope that we're doing it in person, and it's a lot more fun. But in closing, I want to once more thank our sponsors for hosting this event: AGCM Incorporated, Fluor Corporation, HCC Goldman Sachs, 10,000 Small Businesses, Houston Community College, HR in Alignment, Kirksey Architecture, Molina Walker Almager Architects Incorporated, Rabba Kistner Consultants, Rice and Gardner Consultants, Texas State Technical College, the University of Houston, and Wharton County Junior College. And I know everyone asks me, hey, are the kids going back to school in August? And the answer is complex and slightly confusing. That means we don't know, but we kind of do know. But if you want to know more about that, Dr. Charles Dupree will be joining us on July 29th at noon for another Zoom webinar. The answer to that question has changed 15 times in the last month and will probably continue to change. And then in October, we have planned the 13th annual State of the Schools at Safari Texas Ranch. I'm really hoping and praying that we will be there in person, but we have those two things coming up. So in the meantime, thank you again for your participation and time spent with us. I know all of our attendees appreciate that too. And meanwhile, stay safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you in person down the road. So signing off, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.